Setting up a new aquarium is always fun and exciting. It's a really rewarding experience to build a little ecosystem and to watch it evolve. Choosing fish and observing how they interact with the home that you've made for them is a magical experience. Unfortunately, however, things don't always go according to plan. Sometimes you'll have to deal with your fair share of challenges along the way. In this video, I'm going to show you how I set up this 20-gallon long aquarium for a little community of fish. I'm really happy with it, but there were definitely some struggles along the way. I'll show you the whole 5-week-long process, from setting up the aquarium, watching it grow in, adding fish, and dealing with some problems that I unfortunately created for myself. I'm Lucas, and welcome to Terracotta Aquarium. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. So the fish that I'm scaping this tank for are actually currently down here in this holding tank. There are 6 panda corydoras. There's also 1 Bolivian ram named Phil. And there's somewhere between 10 and 15 cardinal tetras. I've had them for a while and I'm not sure exactly what their numbers are at right now. So the goal with this tank is going to be to make a nice home for them. And it's going to be a little bit of a temporary home for Phil because I want to get a larger group of Bolivian rams at some point. And I think I am going to be doing a big South American cichlid tank some point in the future. Basically, until I do that project, I need a good home for him. So I want to make a nice place with lots of caves and that kind of thing. I'm thinking that this scape is going to be really rock heavy. But I'm excited to start this project. Let's get going on the substrate. So for the first layer of the substrate, I'm going to be using some pea gravel. This stuff is really, really cheap. And the reason I'm using it is that it's a nice kind of larger grain. So having something like this on the bottom layer of your substrate is really going to help prevent any compaction, which is just the compression of the substrate over time. And that can lead to just some nasty gases forming. So having something like this where the water can flow through it a little bit more easily will help to prevent that. So now I'm going to turn this nice gravel layer into a turbocharged nutrient base. And to do that, I'm going to be using some topsoil. And just for reference for the amounts here, this is roughly 2 quarts of pea gravel. This is a 2-quart container, and I've got roughly 2 cups of topsoil in here. Doing this is going to provide really good long-term nutrients for the aquarium, and keeping it on the bottom layer is going to make sure it doesn't get stirred up. After adding the topsoil, I mixed it thoroughly with the pea gravel. Next, I added some leftover substrate from past projects. It's a mix of sand, gravel, and aquasoil. So I'm just using this stuff because I have it on hand, but if you're starting your first aquarium, you're obviously not going to have something like this reused substrate. So in place of this, you could easily just add more pea gravel or add more aquasoil, which is what I'm going to do next. But either way, you're going to end up with a mixture of topsoil, pea gravel, and aquasoil, which you're then going to cap over with sand. For aquasoil, I'm using fluval stratum. It's my aquasoil of choice, and I'm adding a thin layer just to bulk up the nutrients a bit. So that's the nutrient layer done. But if you really wanted to at this point, you could take it a step further and add some root tabs. I'm going to wait in this case because I know that after I do my decorative sand layer, I am going to be adding in quite a few rocks. And if you put a rock on top of a root tab, you're not really going to be getting the value out of the root tab that you otherwise would if you just put it directly where your plants are. So that's why in this case, I'm going to wait. So now I'm going to add some sand. And you'll notice that I left a gap at the front of the tank. And that's because I want to create a clean foreground with the sand. And I'm not really going to be planting in this area, so there's not going to be any need for nutrients here. And so if you start pouring your sands in the front, just like this, that's going to make sure that your aquasoil doesn't creep forward and mix too much with the clean foreground that you're trying to make. Okay, so that is the whole substrate system complete. And I do want to make sure to go with a fairly deep sand bed here because the cories do like to dig. They are going to be sifting all of this sand through their mouths. So it's important to have a little bit of depth so that they don't go straight into the aqua soil layer. And Phil, the Bolivian ram, he also likes to sift through the sand a little bit. So good to just be safe and have a nice thick sand layer. But you'll also notice that I have banked everything towards the back of the tank. So it's kind of a slope going up towards the back. If you have the whole substrate just kind of flat, it'll look like the tank and the scape just kind of falls off into nothingness towards the back there. So yeah, if you always practice that in your scapes, they'll always look a little bit better, like they have more depth. But now for the fun part, we can get started on the hardscape. So I think I want to base the scape around a cave that's kind of coming from back here. So I'm gonna try to use these two pieces to do that. So this is kind of what I'm going for, just like an interesting cave kind of refuge for Phil. And this might not be the final variation, but you can kind of see the idea that I'm gonna go for. Lots of rocks, lots of refuge places for the fish and for Phil specifically. So I'm pretty happy with the scape so far. I feel like I'm really enacting my vision here of really a predominantly rocky scape with a few different refuges for Phil. But I think at this point, I'm gonna start adding some scatter gravel. I really do love adding scatter gravel because I feel like it makes the scape really come alive. But I am going to hold back a little bit just because I want a nice sandy place for the cories. But good rule of thumb with scatter gravel is to just kind of choose a larger rock and then just let that scatter gravel kind of fall around it. And in this case, I am going to kind of push it up against this larger rock here. So I want to keep it kind of contained. I'm really just trying to go with a few patches. And for those of you that might be a little bit concerned about adding scatter gravel with cories who are sensitive to a little bit of like a sharper substrate, I've chosen a scatter gravel here that is not sharp at all. It's nice little rounded pebbles, so it really is just an accent, and I'm not gonna have to worry about it harming the cories at all. So this actually came together pretty quickly, and I'm happy with it. I think it's really cool. I think it's a really dynamic scape. I think it's a lot different than the other scapes in my studio. So yeah, I think we're ready to start planting. So I have a lot of plants down here in this storage tank, but they've been here for a couple weeks at this point, kind of just floating in water, so they're not doing particularly well. So I think I'm gonna get in here, kind of pick through what my options are, and then plant what I'm happy with if I find any plants that I really wanna use. And then tomorrow, I'm probably going to go to my local store and see what kind of new plants they have that I might wanna use. And that's gonna be fun. But for today, I'm gonna pick through here, see what I can use. I started with a couple big clumps of Java fern. I used them to accentuate the two islands that I created with the rocks, and they add a lot of impact to the scape. Next, I added some pieces of Anubias and Bucephalandra. A couple of these were glued to rocks, which made them really easy to place. I decided to fill up the tank to see how the plants looked underwater. Then I got the filter started. The next day, I got some new plants from my local shop. I got 2 pots of Crypt Tropica, some Alternanthera, and Ludwigia. I placed one of the crypts near the center of the tank and the other on the far side of the right-hand island. I planted the stem plants behind the islands and in the back of the tank. As a final touch, I added some mini water lettuce. After I finished planting, I sat back to let the tank settle in. Unfortunately, over the first few weeks, I made a series of mistakes that led to the startup phase of this aquarium becoming a complete disaster. Before I show you exactly what happened, let me take a second to talk about this filter. So this is the HG150 backpack aquarium filter from Hygger. I got this filter for free, so huge thank you to Hygger for supporting my channel and this build specifically. I've been using this filter for the last few days, and honestly, I have to say I'm really happy with it. The price of this thing is actually insane for everything that you're getting with it. It comes in at just about $42 on the Hygger website. The filter is rated for up to 32 gallons, and you get some seriously good flow from this thing. I currently have it on the lowest setting, and it's giving me more than enough for this 20 long. The backpack also comes with an attachment for a surface skimmer and an attachment for a spray bar. And I also really like that with the stock outlet, it's really easy to angle it slightly to get the flow going across the surface of the water, which is really hard to do with hang on the back filters without modifying them. And the backpack also has a really interesting feature that at first I was really skeptical of. And that's this little easy water change outlet here. You can uncap this little part here, turn the valve, and then water will flow out of the aquarium. And I really did think this was a gimmick at first, but honestly, after using it once, I actually think it's pretty handy. If you open up the backpack, it has 4 compartments inside for biomedia and for filter floss. And that's way more than just about any hang on the back filter, and is on par for a lot of smaller canister filters. It's one of the best hang on the back filters that I've seen, and it gives you all of the perks of a canister filter without the price. If you want to get this filter for yourself, you can find a link to it down in the description of this video. If you use my affiliate link, the channel does get a little bit of a kickback, so if you want to support me and get a sweet filter, make sure you follow that link. Okay, let's get back to the build. Over the first few weeks after setup, I made a series of mistakes that led to this aquarium having a really rough startup phase. I think it's important to share mistakes and challenges in this hobby because even if things don't go according to plan, there's always something you can learn or a mistake that you can be sure to avoid in the future. About a week after I finished planting, I added the fish. I immediately felt that the tank was a little overstocked, but I let the fish settle for a week before making any changes. I could tell that the cardinals were a little stressed out by the light, so I added more floating plants. A couple days later, I decided that I should switch out the Oyo light for a couple of smaller Lamini lights, which are much less powerful. This definitely helped, but the cardinals were spending most of their time hiding in the corner of the tank, and I still felt that I'd overstocked it, so I decided to move them to my Pistogramma aquarium. At this point, the Pandacories and Phil seemed far less stressed and were spending more time exploring the aquarium. This is where I really messed up. When I switched to the new lights, I set them on an 8-hour timer, but I forgot to actually turn on that timer, so they were on 24/7 for a week straight. My aquarium studio is about 30 minutes away from my house, and I usually show up after the lights turn on, and I usually leave before the lights turn off, which is why it took me so long to realize my mistake. This absolutely destroyed the stem plants, which up until that point were doing really well. It also led to a huge diatom phase. The whole system was really overloaded with energy. Diatom algae took hold and the stems completely melted away. I ended up having to remove what was left of the stems, and I cut a bunch of algified leaves off of the crypts. And I really put the backpack filter through its paces. I ended up cleaning out the pre-filter a couple of times over the first 3 or 4 weeks,
but this thing really was a trooper. Honestly, I can't recommend this filter enough. It's really good, especially for the price. I did end up getting rid of all the little plastic balls that were floating around in the pre-filter. Honestly, they just fell out when I was cleaning it and I didn't bother replacing them. I was monitoring the water parameters really closely throughout this whole process, but unfortunately one of the cories got sick with some sort of fungal infection. And before I knew it, I lost 3 of them in 3 days. Luckily, I still have 3 left, but it was really sad to lose half of the group. It happened really fast, and I honestly don't know exactly why they got sick, but the most likely thing that I can attribute it to is stress. Most likely caused by leaving the light on for a week straight. I was really sad to lose the cories, but I really wanted to save this aquarium, so I did a big cleaning of the tank, removing any remaining plant debris and replacing all of the floating plants, which had collected a ton of diatoms. The rotala in my 10-gallon tank needed a big trim up, so I decided to replant all of the trimmings into the new tank. I think that they look really good, and so far they've been growing really well in the new scape. I waited another week, continuing to watch the water parameters, before deciding to get some new fish. I went out to my local shop and brought home some beautiful little Endlers. I acclimated them to the tank, turned off the lights, and added them in, then let them settle for an hour or so.
It makes me really happy to have these Endlers in here. This build has been such a roller coaster, but I think at this point now, with the Endlers in here, I'm really happy with it. I went with a group of 2 males and 6 females, so 8 total, and hopefully I will get some breeding going on. I think it's pretty likely that Phil is going to go after some of their babies whenever it does happen, but their Endlers and guppies breed prolifically, so I'm sure that there are going to be a ton of babies and hopefully some of them survive. But as I said before, this is a temporary home for Phil, the Bolivian ram, so when I get around to making him a big new tank with a new family of his own, I'm sure after that a lot more of the babies will survive. But since removing all of the dying plants and adding in the rotala has started to grow pretty well, and I've really seen quite a bit of dieback on the diatoms, and I haven't really had any problems with algae. When plants die off and melt like that, they do just put their nutrients back into the water column. So it really was kind of a vicious cycle that I was experiencing there with the plants dying, that leading to more algae, that destroying the plants, and of course, leaving the lights on like I did. Really was not great for anything in this aquarium. I am really sad that I lost 3 of the panda cories. They had been with me for 6-8 months, something like that, maybe even longer. It's hard to remember exactly. So I am really sad to have lost them. But, you know, sometimes things like this do happen in the aquarium hobby, and it's a harsh reality that little mistakes we make like that can kind of create a chain reaction of events that lead to fish loss. And panda cories especially can be really sensitive. So it was just really unfortunate for them that I had kind of 1 get sick and then 2 more follow after that. But the 3 remaining do seem really healthy and really happy in here. They're super active all the time. And I think that my plan long-term with this tank is that once I move Phil to a new home, I am gonna get another little group of panda cories to make their group a little bit bigger, because with the 3 in here now, I am kind of at the minimum group size. So I'll wanna get at least 3 more. But I might even go up to like 6 to 8, something like that. Yeah, probably like 8 total. But I'm gonna kind of play it by ear, because they're not gonna predate on the Endlers or anything, and they do have a really nice little habitat in here, but I'll play it by ear. I'm hopefully gonna do that project for Phil in the next 3 or 4 months, I'm thinking is my current plan, but I'll get there when I get there. But I do think that this tank is really well set up for the future, and I'm excited to see how it grows in and how things start to change and evolve in here. But thank you guys so much for watching. I know that this video was a little bit of a different one. It's showing some of the mistakes I made and that kind of thing. But hopefully you also learned something from watching me have a little bit of a rougher experience, because I know that this does happen to a lot of beginners. So yeah, hopefully this helped in kind of a roundabout way. But if you did enjoy the video, don't forget to give it a like. And while you're down there, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because it really does help me out. And you can see the next projects that I'm working on, like the big tank for fill. And don't forget, guys, to check out the Hygger backpack filter. I really did put that thing through its paces in the startup of this aquarium, but it has been really effective. Even though I filled it with diatom algae a couple of times, the flow rate has been super, super good. So yeah, check out the backpack. I highly recommend it. Link down in the description. But thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.